The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back for another Sunday of podcasting excellence here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt. Great to be back with you in the studio once again. Joining me in the studio on this early Saturday morning is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It is very early.
It is. Not as early as it was.
No, but until I sleep again, it's going to just constantly feel early.
No doubt about that. We were up early for the Elimination Chamber, and joining us, leaving home really early this morning to come over and join us for the premium live event was Rachel. Rachel, how's it going?
I am here. I am tired. Sharing a bed with two kids in the middle of the night. Yeah, I could just do nothing the rest of the day, but I am here.
We are here, and we are here to talk about the Elimination Chamber, which started at 5 a.m. Eastern time. And actually, if you want to talk the pre-show, the first pre-show match was at about 4:30 a.m. Eastern time. But a great event. Perth, Australia certainly did their best to put on a great show. I think it was an unqualified success for WWE, both from a business standpoint and publicity and everything else that goes along with that. But there was actually wrestling to talk about, and that's what we're going to do today on the Nerdcast Empire. And we're going to start with the first match on the Elimination Chamber, which was a women's Elimination Chamber match. And the winner of the women's Elimination Chamber, as I think we all expected, was Becky Lynch, but it was certainly an interesting way to get there. We'll quickly run down the highlights. It was Naomi and Becky Lynch to start. Tiffany Stratton came into the match at 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Liv Morgan was the next in at 10 minutes and 15 seconds. Tiffany Stratton pinned Naomi at 13:28 for the first elimination of the match. Raquel Rodriguez came in right after at 14:10, followed by Bianca Belair, the final entrant, at 17:40. Then Liv Morgan pinned Tiffany Stratton at 22:55. Belair pinned Rodriguez at 25:05. And then we got to the end game with Liv Morgan rolling up Belair at 32:09, followed by Lynch pinning Morgan at 32:15 to get the win and to secure her match against the winner of the main event, which we'll talk about in just a bit at WrestleMania. We'll start off with Rachel. I feel like we always start with Mike. We'll start with Rachel this time to kind of switch things up. Your thoughts on the Women's Elimination Chamber match?
It was a great match. I think it went, like you said, exactly the way we expected to, with the winner being Becky Lynch. I loved seeing how over Tiffany Stratton was. We talked about that while we were watching it live, how they were so, for her being the only heel in the match, they were so over on her. And she was so cheered to the point when she got eliminated by Liv Morgan, they booed Liv Morgan. I think everyone looked good in the match. It set up some different matches for the future. And yeah, I expected Becky to win hands down.
Yeah, I don't think that was any real surprise there. Mike, your thoughts?
No, I agree completely. It's interesting that the amount of time they gave this match for a women's chamber match compared to previous. And I think you also look at it like the people who were in the match, there didn't feel like there was that person that didn't belong in the match. And I think historically with men's and women's chamber matches, they've been filled out sometimes by people where you're just like, you're not a serious contender. You're just not. So I think like in both matches, you know, when you look at the early eliminations, it's like, well, someone had to be eliminated early. Like you have to get there somehow. I think they could have some issues in the future with Tiffany Stratton, because I think she has, even though her character work has been so heelish, she's someone that you want to root for because of her athletic ability and her attractiveness. I think they're going to struggle with her not getting cheered over people that maybe they want to push as faces.
I think you make an interesting point, but I think part of the reason why that was the case this year goes to the improved booking of WWE, especially their women's division, because I feel like over the years you've had people in the match that maybe didn't feel like they belonged there because they had done almost nothing of any importance for months. And then you just stick them in the Elimination Chamber and you're supposed to buy the fact that they're a serious contender. I think all 12 participants in both matches, if you would have told me that any of the 12 or two of the 12 would have won, I could have gotten behind. There would have been some logical explanation as to why they would have went that way. And that's not always the case, but I think you're 100% right on Stratton. I think if you're not an NXT fan, first off, you're missing one of the best wrestling shows ever every week. Please watch NXT. But her vignette she did right before she left with Fallon Henley, where she had to clean out the stables. And it's like, even though clearly she was healing it up, like, as she went through it, it's like you started feeling bad for her. She's very easy to get that sympathy for while everybody's just standing around laughing at her. You're right. I think they're going to have a hard time keeping her as a heel, but we'll see how they book that. And it's going to be really interesting. I think you're going to have to line up the right opponents for her to be able to do that. Everybody in the match, I thought, had their moments, which again is indicative of Triple H booking. I don't think anybody came away looking bad. and Becky Lynch, as we anticipated, winning the match at 32-15. I guess the question, we'll start with Mike this time. Obviously, we know where Lynch is headed, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the podcast. But everybody else, kind of where do you think these five are going? Because there are a couple of maybe logical pair-offs there, but it'll be interesting to see what are your kind of early thoughts on where they may be headed toward WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I could see maybe doing like a Stratton Belair thing because you have both, top level athletes, very, very strong physical wrestlers. I could see that being something. I'm glad they brought Naomi back, but I don't know of anything just right off the top of my head where it makes sense to plug her in. Kind of the same with Morgan. She's doing this whole revenge tour, but I don't know how. She doesn't make sense going after and getting revenge on the people who she needs to get revenge on because they're already kind of spoken for. So I think they're in a better position than they would have been a few years ago as far as Triple H is going to find something for them to do. But I don't know off the top of my head yet what that is.
I think that's the difference to me between the women's chamber and the men's chamber is the men's chamber very definitively set up several WrestleMania matches. The women's chamber is kind of left it a little more open-ended. Rachel, your thoughts on that?
I agree with Mike. I was going to say about Bianca and Tiffany Stratton. I think that'd be they had a few moments during the match that I think that could set them up for WrestleMania. Another one, Raquel Rodriguez. I don't know where they're going with her, but I'm glad to see she's back after having all of her medical conditions she's still going through. But I don't know where you go with her, and I don't know Naomi. I'll be anxious to see what they do with them because I'm just not sure who you put them with.
And I think potential to pair some of those players up as tag teams as well, because obviously you had Rodriguez and Morgan team together in the past. And obviously the women's tag champs are going to need something to do at WrestleMania. So that's also a possibility, but it's going to be interesting to see. But a really good match. Becky Lynch wins, and we'll find out her opponent at WrestleMania coming up in the main event. Second match was tag team action for the Undisputed Tag Team Championships. It was Judgment Day, which was Finn Balor and Damian Priest defending their titles against the New Catch Republic, totally not British Strong Style, Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. It was Balor winning in 17:23 by pinning Dunne. We're going to start with Mike on this one. I thought this was an excellent second match on the card, a really good tag team match, and continue the Triple H trend of putting together two tag teams and just letting them go and putting on a great match.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a takeover tag match, and that's really the highest compliment you can give WWE tag matches. My first thoughts is something like a New Catch Republic doesn't exist under a Vince McMahon WWE. Not only did you not have a Pete Dunne with him in charge, but this team that embraces catch wrestling and then their heritage as British wrestlers, I don't think anyone who was kind of on top of creative back then would have felt anything with that. I just don't think it would happen. Yeah, otherwise, great match. What can I say? I'm hoping we see more of Dunne and Bate in the tag division and hopefully they'll have something for them moving forward. I still think ultimately we're looking at probably Judgment Day versus DIY or Awesome Truth at Mania, but we'll see.
Yeah, no question about that. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the tag division moves forward and whether they'll eventually split the tag titles, because that's obviously something that gets rumored a lot, but still has not happened. Rachel, your thoughts on the tag match?
I mean, seeing Pete Dunne be Pete Dunne makes my heart just so happy. I was even going to mention the idea of splitting the belts because you have so many good tag teams in the company. It's just hard to have it on in one group. Dominic getting booed so loudly he literally could not hear him speak on the microphone. That amazes me still how much of a heel and how hated he is, but still kind of how loved he is as well. I think it was a great match. I love seeing Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne together, but I expected Judgment Day to win.
Yeah, I don't think there was any surprise there. As Mike said, it does feel like they've got a couple of options as far as WrestleMania. But kind of to get back to your point, Mike, and we talked about this live while we were watching it, it really feels like if WWE really wanted to bring in junior tag champions, they have got a plethora of teams that would kind of fit that junior tag title build. And you could really put on some fantastic matches really across all three brands.
Absolutely. I think when you look at a lot of the teams down in NXT even, or, your LWOs and your Legatos, so many of those kind of fit more of that junior tag mold. And why not? It just gives you some differentiating thing as opposed to just, here are the Raw tag titles, here are the SmackDown tag titles. With their world titles, they've broken away from those show connotations. So why not give yourself differing tag titles?
I think that's certainly an interesting idea. We'll see how they move forward with that. But again, tag team wrestling doing very well right now in WWE, which is certainly an encouraging sign and hopefully something that continues under Triple H's booking. Before we go to break, last segment we'll talk about was the Grayson Waller effect, and certainly kind of went as you would think for the most part. He had Austin Theory out there first, who basically healed it up, then brought out Waller, who got big face cheers and did a shoey with a UFC guy ringside. And then, of course, Seth Rollins got a big pop, and then Cody Rhodes got an enormous pop. Not a whole lot of news really out of the segment, other than you had Cody saying that he wants to face The Rock one-on-one, and Seth Rollins basically saying you don't have to do it alone. Austin Theory comes in and tries to do his best Rock impersonation and gets punked out, and basically is the one that ends up taking the beating so that they don't have to make Grayson Waller look bad. Rachel, your thoughts on that segment?
I think it was great. It was great to see Grayson Waller actually get cheered because he's just booed so heavily. It was weird. Hearing that Seth Rollins is days away from being cleared, that's always good news. I mean, obviously we knew he was going to be ready by WrestleMania, or else they wouldn't have started booking the match this way. Hearing Cody say he wants to fight The Rock, and Seth Rollins being his shield, as he said the other day. I'm excited to see what goes on. But I think it was a great segment. Austin Theory literally was there just to get beat up. It was fun.
I was pleased to see they didn't make Waller look bad. I mean, you had the option to have Waller come out and try to heal it up and see if he could turn the crowd as just a challenge. Like, hey, can you go out there and actually make these people hate you? But instead they go with the easy route and they let the crowd go ahead and cheer him, which I thought was a good call. Mike, your thoughts on that?
I think anytime that you don't try to coerce the crowd to behave the way you want them to behave, as opposed to what they organically or how they want to organically behave, I think you're doing it the right way. I enjoy Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. I think they're both entertaining. I know people crap on Theory a lot, but considering he doesn't really have a lot of direction right now, I still enjoy seeing him on my television. Yeah, it looks like they might be setting up maybe a night one tag match with Rollins and Cody versus Rock and Reigns. We'll see how that goes. I appreciate that they had Waller stand down and kind of let them beat up Theory, but he didn't actually actively participate in it. So there's not that weird ooh, he's getting over on this night, and then next SmackDown they're somehow buddies again, or something inexplicable where maybe a few years ago they would potentially do that, where they do something that doesn't make any sense and then pretend like it never happened. Yeah, overall entertaining segment.
And they kind of set it up because it was Theory who ripped the microphone away from Grayson Waller, and you could see the look on Waller's face, like, how dare you do this on my show? So that was when, he's kind of justified in saying, oh, well, if you want to be the center of attention, by all means, be the center of attention and get beat up for it. But yeah, really good segment for a talk show segment. I think when you only have 4 matches, it's important to have the little variety. And I think having that there makes a ton of sense. Obviously with Seth not being cleared, there's only so much you can do. So they did a good job kind of moving everything on along down the road, give a hometown pop for Grayson Waller, and we move on with business. And that means we're going to get ready to head to our first break. When we come back, this will be our only break today on this edition of the Nerdcast Empire. But we come back, we're going to talk about the men's elimination chamber match. We're also going to talk about the women's world title match, which rightfully was in that main event spot. We'll do that when we come back from this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, it is the Elimination Chamber edition of the Nerdcast Empire. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com, where you can stay up to date on all things Nerdcast Empire. You can check out our store, which has certainly gotten more than a few orders so far. We certainly appreciate everybody buying our merch. You can check that out at nerdcastempire.com/store. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow is Music Mondays on the Nerdcast Empire. We're going to be taking a look at the releases from February the 9th. We had some interesting ones last week. We've got even more interesting ones this week. We're going to find out who had the best releases of the week. We'll pick our favorites. We'll bring those to you tomorrow on Music Monday on the Nerdcast Empire. We're going to get to the men's elimination chamber match next. They followed the Grayson Waller effect, and certainly another really good elimination chamber match. Kind of run down the highlights. It was LA Knight and Drew McIntyre starting. Kevin Owens came in third at 4:35. Bobby Lashley came in at 9:10. Randy Orton at 13:40. And then Logan Paul, final entrant, at 17:45. No eliminations up to this point, so all 6 guys in the match. McIntyre pinned Lashley with a Claymore at 21:27. And then Lashley really struggled to get out of the ring. They had to bring in 4 referees to try to get him out. And of course, after I believe it was Logan Paul last year who took advantage of an open cage door. I think everybody kind of saw what was coming, and it turned out it was AJ Styles who would come into the open cage, beat up LA Knight with a chair, hit him with a Styles Clash on the chair, which allowed McIntyre to pin Knight at 24-20. And then Randy Orton got hot. He pinned Kevin Owens with an RKO at 28-03, pinned Logan Paul with an RKO at 32-35. And then it was Orton and McIntyre had a really good one going. Orton hits McIntyre with the RKO. Looks like Orton's going to win. And this time it's Logan Paul who doesn't get out of the cage, hitting Randy Orton with the brass knuckles. And then McIntyre able to get the pin at 36-53 to punch his ticket to WrestleMania, where he will take on Seth Rollins for the world title. Mike, we'll start with you on this Elimination Chamber match. I thought this was another really well-booked, really entertaining match.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like the first match, the right person won. I know you don't always want it to be so predictable, but when the obvious person is in the match that you just, there's no reason why McIntyre wouldn't go on and face Rollins at Mania. Like that's the obvious matchup. Why wouldn't we do that? And sometimes it's good when it just happens the way you think it's going to happen. Everyone looked great in the match. That's kind of another trend that we've seen lately where they don't make people look bad. I wasn't really expecting any kind of setup for an Orton-Paul match. I think that's kind of interesting. If you're going to have LA Knight and Styles building up for a Mania match, I guess that's one possible way to have Paul doing something. But I'm not sure where this leaves Owens, what their plans are for him for WrestleMania. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, some fun spots in the match and overall quality.
And certainly the way Owens just went after Paul at every opportunity, it would be very easy to potentially work him into a triple threat or possibly a fatal four-way. Yeah. I think that would make a lot of sense because it feels like we're going to have a lot of singles matches. So a couple of multi-man matches would not be the end of the world, I don't think, in their booking, but still some things to build up to.
Yeah, and I think with Paul being so hated, like you could see where there would be a line of like 5 or 6 people that all want to get at him. So that could be your big multi-man match for one of the mid-card titles.
Yeah, no question about that. Really entertaining match. I love Logan Paul drawing on the wall with the cell with the Elimination Chamber pod with a dry erase marker. That guy's so good at being bad. Like, it's not even right that he's as good at it as he is, but probably because he's kind of that way anyway. But Rachel, your thoughts on the men's Elimination Chamber?
Logan Paul makes you want to punch him in the face, but because you like how bad he is, like how just terrible he is as a human being. It was a great match. Like Mike said, I mean, the right person won. Drew McIntyre had to win. I feel like I like that AJ Styles, people kept saying on social media that he flew all the way around the world just to, beat up on LA Knight. I'm excited to see that match. I'm excited to see Drew versus Seth. I think that's going to be a fantastic match. And then if Drew were to win at WrestleMania, that eventually sets up him and CM Punk when he becomes healthy. I mean, that's just written out already. So I'm anxious to see how it goes.
I think the big question mark to me as we talk about this, and we've talked about it a lot live, is how injured is CM Punk? Is he really out for 8 months or whatever? Or is he not quite out that long? Because while I could see McIntyre winning and holding that to face Punk, I could also see Punk showing up and ruining McIntyre's moment and having those two fight. And obviously Drew McIntyre supposedly is still not signed his extended contract. So will they put the title on a guy who maybe hasn't re-upped yet with the company? That's a question New Japan and Impact TNA have asked a lot lately is, do you promote somebody to a champion that may not be hanging around? So a lot of question marks there.
I can't imagine not re-signing when you're looking at the possibility of a big feud with CM Punk on the other side of that signature. Who else is going to give you that? I think going back to Logan Paul and just his ability as a heel, I think the wrestling community loves the indie wrestler who has spent years honing his in-ring ability. Logan Paul is that with his character work. That man has been a heel for years. And now that he's in WWE, he brought all that experience and that heel ability. The fact that he also has been a natural in ring is one thing, but it's like he took the part that I think is even more difficult to learn, and he comes by that naturally. And I think that's why he's so successful.
I think the biggest challenge for him, and I don't know what the logic was, if this was another Vince decision or what, but if you remember when he first showed up, they kind of went out of their way to try to turn him face again because he didn't want to be a heel, supposedly was what you heard. And it's like, nah, man, like you're a heel. Like you're too good at this. You're kind of a heel in real life. You're not one of the indie darlings that has grinded away, like people are going to want to boo you. And at some point he figured it out, or they figured it out, because now he's going to make so much money, and he already does. I mean, everything he does gets a bazillion views online. So it's perfect from a PR standpoint, and whatever match he has, is going to be a good one. So I think we're all looking forward to however that shakes out, whether it's a singles match or a multi-man match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think it's no different than the wrestlers that they bring in, where WWE's been criticized for such a long time for, we'll sign this person and then totally uproot who they are and try to make them who we want them to be. And with Logan Paul's case, it was, oh, you want to be a face? Okay, despite everything you've done before this, we're going to go ahead and try to make you this ultra face. And, you had money with the guy you signed. Why would you try to alter that? Yeah,
I think that is, again, it's a sign of the Wrestling Observer Booker of the Year, and what he does with booking is, sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just like you said earlier. Sometimes the obvious winner is the right decision. Like if you've done your booking right and you've told the story in a logical way, you should be able to book to a point where people should be like, yeah, that makes sense that that person won, because that's what you should do. Like, I think one of my biggest critiques of wrestling fans is this infatuation with the Vince Russo, Crash TV, Attitude Era type stuff, where they just threw stuff at the wall and nothing made sense. Nothing followed up on anything. And because people have this infatuation with the Attitude Era, they think that's the greatest way to book. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, you can't do that with a sitcom. You can't do that with CSI and have just somebody, you kill off a character one week, the next week they're back. Like, you can't do it that way.
But what made that work back then was because it was the antithesis of how wrestling had always been, where it was not just predictable, but boringly so. Like, they were giving you the exact thing you thought they were going to do all the time, where just the most simplest swerve blew your mind. So, in an era where shows like Jerry Springer were a big deal, injecting that into wrestling, it was fresh. It was something you'd never seen before. And I think there was a shelf life on that. But when it was successful, it was super successful.
I think the real story behind that is that Vince McMahon has been bad at booking for a long time. It didn't show up until he got older and more senile. But like you said, that boring paint by numbers stuff, because that's the way you've always done it, is what got Vince into that issue where he had to do the nonsense booking of the 90s that felt fresh at first, but then went off the rails pretty quickly.
One more thing, going back to this chamber match and kind of the future of the world title. What are we doing with Priest now? He's still sitting there with that briefcase. If you're wanting to eventually, if you're going to have McIntyre beat Rollins and eventually do Punk and McIntyre, where does Priest fit into that?
I keep thinking that he's going to end up challenging Cody immediately after he beats Roman and losing to Cody. That Cody, because it's like you're going to do one last thing to the Cody fans who think they're going to have this big celebration, and then Priest shows up and he gets thwarted on his cash in.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
And then you start whatever the next story is of the Judgment Day, and then you have Cody be an even bigger star, because not only did he beat the unbeatable champion, but he held off the bloodline, but he also avoided a cash in and won. That's my guess, but I honestly
I can see them doing that.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. As of course, assuming that Cody actually wins at WrestleMania, which you just don't know. You just never know. But we know somebody else will be going to WrestleMania, and that is Rhea Ripley. She had the main event spot, and deservedly so, in her home country, albeit a 28-hour drive or whatever I said away from Adelaide. But
practically neighbors.
Basically next door. But at the same time, huge face pop for her. She beats Nia Jax in 14:38 after a riptide, which followed a superplex. It was exactly what it needed to be. I think Mike called it the Hulk Hogan match, where you have Jax having 80% of the offense. Rhea hits a couple big moves and wins the match. The people go nuts. It was great to see her celebrate with her family, the fireworks, everything else. They didn't do the face-off with Becky Lynch, which I thought was a good call, because then you run the risk of some mixed reactions, which they're already going to have to deal with. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But we'll start with Rachel on this last one as well. again, exactly what it needed to be. Rhea Ripley looks like a huge star.
I loved it for Rhea. I think she deserved that moment. I was so excited when I realized it was going to be the main event, which, like you said, deservedly so. I think Nia looked good. I think some people forget that Nia can wrestle because there's been so many issues with her wrestling, but she can put on a good match. And there was also like an inkling of a doubt that Mike mentioned that it would have made sense if Nia would have beaten Rhea and then went on to face Becky for that huge storyline. But I am glad they went with Rhea. I think it made the most sense. I think she's just a beast, and I'm ready to see her against Becky Lynch at WrestleMania.
I think Western Australia government might have been asking for their money back if Nia Jax would have ended up winning the main event. But you're right, there was some doubt there. And again, it was short, but I think a lot of credit belongs to the way they build up Nia Jax and they lead to it. They made her a credible threat for the title. They gave you those doubts, even though you thought there's no way, but there could be a little way. But again, Ripley gets the big one. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Nia Jax is always going to have a somewhat limited offense. So the importance there is to make every move she does look like it kills you. And I think that's what they do, whether it be just her leg drops, her Samoan drop, or her bonsai drop, a lot of drops. But everyone just looks brutal just the way she does it. And she had a great match. This is probably one of the best performances I've seen from her. I think it helps that when you can have someone who's physically capable as Rhea Ripley, both at selling and kind of taking a beating just in general, it allows Nia Jax to kind of play that monster and not potentially actually hurt somebody. What can you say about Rhea Ripley? I think she's one of those wrestlers, and I mentioned it during the live broadcast, that they really felt all in on her for years, even before she became what she is today. And I don't know if everyone really understood why. And I don't even know if they knew what they were getting, but the Rhea Ripley we have now could possibly be the greatest and biggest wrestling star on the women's side they've ever had.
Well, am I remembering correctly? Because obviously my memory's not as great, but she beat Toni Storm to win the NXT UK title.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I think a lot of people then were like, well, Toni Storm is established as this person. She's the one. And here's Rhea Ripley, who's still kind of an unknown. And she comes in and wins that. And now you look back and think, well, of course.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
Like Rhea Ripley is, I think, the biggest female wrestler in the world right now.
For sure.
Get back to the comment you made earlier where you talked about how WWE is doing a good job of not fighting the crowd reactions in certain cases. We're going to find out how that's going to be tested over the next 42 days because it's Becky Lynch versus Rhea Ripley. Obviously, Becky Lynch has a ton of fans. I think everybody likes Becky Lynch, and she's very charismatic, very popular. But you got Rhea Ripley, who, yes, she's a mega face in Australia, but she's a kind of a face everywhere. People love Rhea Ripley. They love mommy. How do you think WWE is going to deal with this? Are they going to try to have Rhea heel it up extra to put the face moniker on Becky, or are they going to just let these two go at it and wherever the fans fall, they fall?
I get the feeling they're going to try to have Becky acknowledge Rhea's popularity, kind of side with the fans. Like, yeah, I get why you really like her. I think she's awesome too, but I have to beat her. Kind of that like, hey, I respect your guys' opinion, but I still have to win this match. But I do think that they've kind of thought about this stuff more than usual. Going back to the Chamber match earlier in the night, I felt like they kind of did the race to the finish out of fear that maybe people would cheer Liv Morgan over Becky Lynch, which based on how they felt about Morgan compared to Stratton, I don't know if that would have been an issue, but I think that's something that may be already on their mind a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thought, and they did a really good job. And like you said, I think it turned out okay in the end anyway, but it'll certainly be interesting to see how they build it up over the next few weeks. But really good event that we got up super early to watch. Congratulations to those of you who live in the part of the world that actually got this at a normal time for once.
You deserve it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you'll be the ones up in the middle of the night when WrestleMania rolls around 2 nights. And we'll have podcasts both nights for WrestleMania. So make sure you get your notifications, get your podcast wherever you get your podcast, because we will have night 1 and night 2 podcasts, which night 1 will also include the NXT takeover. They don't call it that anymore, but Stand and Deliver. We'll be talking about that as well. So it's going to be a big wrestling weekend on the Nerdcast Empire. Rachel, your final thoughts on what to me seemed like a really great night in WWE?
Oh, I think it was a fantastic premium live event. I think it definitely started out, or not really started the road to WrestleMania because we've already been there, but makes me really excited for the next 42 days to see what transpires between now and then.
Yeah, definitely have a lot of exciting things set up and still some things that we have to figure out over the next few weeks. Mike, your final thoughts?
I give them credit because I feel like, especially on the men's side, they've probably had to like call several audibles as far as how we get from Royal Rumble to Mania. I don't know what this show would have looked like under the original plan that, involved Rock and Reigns wrestling and Cody and Rollins. Like, what do you do with the Chamber then? So I think they've done a really good job setting things up.
The other thing, they had the CM Punk injury they had to ride around.
Yeah, you're right. That's another thing. CM Punk, obviously they had plans for him at Mania as well. Looking at the card and seeing 4 matches, I was kind of curious how that was going to play out and how I'd feel at the end of it. But it worked out. I didn't feel like any match overstayed its welcome or dragged in any way, but it also is still somehow ended up being a really long card. So it's interesting how they worked it to where I didn't feel bad about staying or waking up early and watching it.
No question about it. I think that's the biggest thing that has improved in the Triple H era is knowing that, hey, we want to keep this about a 3-hour event. I went a little over 3 hours, but you don't want to go much longer than that. I really wish for AEW's sake and their fans' sake that they would figure that out and really condense their premium events, because I think you'll find better opinions of those events if you can knock them down to 5 or 6 matches instead of having 20. I think that becomes a little bit too much, but especially when they're kind of crazy. But that's going to wrap things up for this week on the Nerdcast Empire. We've got Music Monday coming up tomorrow, so make sure you check that out. A lot of work on our part, but it's a labor of love, and we're going to continue to make content. We appreciate everybody who's been downloading our podcast. Our numbers have continued to go up, which is really exciting. We're going to continue to push forward and try to do bigger and better things as we continue on in 2024. Big shout out to Stove Lake Media for all of their support as we continue to try to grow the Nerdcast Empire. That's going to wrap things up for this week. A big thanks to Mike and Rachel for disrupting their sleep schedule. I'm going to go take a nap so I can go call some women's college basketball this afternoon. And then we will be joining you again tomorrow for Music Mondays. That wraps things up for the entire crew. I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.